30 days, Kambili. In 30 days, either that loan is paid in full or Onwuka Naturals becomes mine. Every machine, every drum of shea, every one of those women you like to parade in your little videos. Mine.
And you know I cannot raise that money in 30 days, Chief Dumebi.
Chief,
you made
these
very sure of that.
Which is why
Take
your
a
uncle
breath.
and I came here as friends, not creditors. There is another way, my dear, a cleaner way. Your grandfather's estate would settle this debt 10 times over, and that estate is waiting for you. It only asks one small thing of you first.
Marriage.
A husband, a wedding, one signature, and everything is saved. The company, the women, your father's name. We have even found you a suitable man, a serious man. Obiora is here if you would like to meet him now.
Kambili Onwuka sat very still in that air-conditioned office, between the financier who wanted her company and the uncle who was smiling like a man doing her a favor. And she understood, in that moment, one thing they did not know she understood. That two men do not sit a woman down and offer to rescue her this
Agreed.
gently, this generously, this suddenly, unless they are the same two men who arranged the drowning. My people, before we talk about the trap, we must first talk about what was built and who did the building. Because
Reviewing
everything
the
that
quarterly
happened in that
reports,
office
I
only
noticed-
makes sense once you know what those men were really reaching for. Kambili Onwuka built Onwuka Naturals out of a single black pot in her mother's kitchen in Aba. She was 23, freshly out of school with a chemistry degree and no job, in a country that had no jobs to give her. And she did what her grandmother had done, and her grandmother before that. She boiled shea, she cured black soap, she pressed palm kernel oil, and she wrapped it and sold it from a tray on her head, street by street, in the punishing Aba heat. But Kambili added the one thing her grandmothers never had. She read. She read about pH and preservatives and what the Europeans call cold pressing. She kept records nobody in that trade kept. She listened to the skin of every woman who complained, and she adjusted and adjusted again, until a jar of Onwuka soap did what the imported ones twice its price only promised to do. By 30, that pot had become a small factory on the outskirts of Aba, with a blue and white gate and her surname over it. 40 women worked there. And here, my people, is the part I need you to hold in your chest, because the men in that office never once held it in theirs. Those 40 women were not staff. They were widows who had buried husbands and been chased from their husbands' compounds with nothing. They were single mothers the market had spat out. They were girls who would otherwise have been sent to men in far cities, under arrangements nobody wanted to name out loud. Kambili paid them on the 28th of every month, before she paid herself. And she paid them enough that their own daughters stayed in school. That factory was not a business. It was a roof over 40 families, held up by one stubborn woman's two hands. Let me give you just one of the 40, so she is not only a number to you, the way she was only a number to the men in that office. There was a woman there called Onwuka, who had come to Kambili's gate 3 years earlier with a baby tied to her back and a swelling on her face her husband had put there the night before he threw her into the road. Kambili gave her a stool at the curing table, a wage on the 28th, and asked her nothing at all about the swelling. Today, Onwuka runs the entire soap curing line, and that baby on her back is a bright girl near the top of her class, in a school her mother pays for with her own money, earned with her own two hands. Now multiply that one woman by 40, my people. That was the arithmetic Chief Dumebi looked at and saw only drums of shea he could carry off. Some men cannot see a cathedral. They can only ever see stone that nobody has stolen yet. If you have ever built something quietly, brick by brick, while people who never lifted a single brick stood back and waited to see if it would be worth stealing, type brick by brick in the comments. Because Kambili built exactly like that, and the vultures were already circling before the roof was even finished. The dream that became the Noose was, as it so often is, a good dream. A buyer came, a real one, a chain of natural beauty shops in the United Kingdom, the kind of contract that turns a local soap maker into an exporter overnight. They wanted Onwuka Naturals on their shelves, but they wanted certified quantities, certified premises, certified consistency, a proper factory floor, industrial saponification tanks, cold storage, packaging lines. To meet that order, Kambili needed capital she did not have, and no ordinary bank would lend fast enough to catch the season. That is when Chief Dumebi Ilodigwe appeared, smiling, with money in his hand. Chief Dumebi ran a finance house in Aba, the polished kind, with glass doors and a driver, the kind of man who is introduced at every wedding as a philanthropist and known at every quiet table as something else. He offered Kambili a bridge loan, enough to build the factory and fill that first great export order. Fast money. Grateful money. But money, my people, always tells you its true character in the small print. And the small print of Chief Dumebi's money was a single clause written in the flattest, most reasonable language. Should the borrower fail to make the balloon repayment on the due date, the debt would convert, automatically, into a controlling equity stake. Miss one payment, and the company would no longer be hers. It would be his.
Kambili was not a foolish woman. She read that clause. But she also had a signed export contract in her other hand, a first payment from the UK buyer that would land weeks before Chief Dumebi's balloon came due, more than enough to clear it. On paper, the timing was safe. On paper. My people learned this from her because it cost her nearly everything to learn it herself. When a dangerous man offers you easy money and points at the one thing that makes it safe, walk over and check whether that one safe thing is standing on his side of the room. Because Kambili's entire safety rested on that first export payment arriving on time, and the man who could make sure it did not arrive on time was sitting closer to that buyer's freight and banking chain than she ever imagined. The factory rose. The women moved into their new hall, proud, dignified, some of them weeping the first day they wore the branded aprons with the company name across the chest. The first great batch was cured, tested, packed, containerized, and shipped, and Kambili began to count down the days to the payment that would clear her debt and set her free. The payment did not come. First, it was a documentation query, then a compliance hold, then a delay at the buyer's end that no one could quite explain. A first tranche frozen in some correspondent bank over a discrepancy that kept mutating every time it was resolved. Every explanation was reasonable. Every explanation ate another 3 days, and the balloon repayment to Chief Dumebi marched toward her, one square on the calendar at a time, indifferent as a tide. There was a night near the end of that terrible counting when Kambili walked the factory floor alone after everyone had gone home. The machines she had borrowed a fortune to buy stood silent and gleaming in the dark. The branded aprons hung in their neat row like people waiting, and she stood in the middle of the thing she had built from a single pot and understood fully that in a matter of days, strangers might walk through this same gate and own all of it. The tanks, the surname, the future of 40 families, because of a payment that somebody, somewhere in an office she would never see, had quietly decided not to release. My people, there is a specific kind of fear that visits only the people who build things, and it comes to them at night, on the very floor of what they built. It is not the fear of losing money. It is the fear of losing the proof that you were ever anything at all. Kambili stood inside that fear for 1 full hour, and then she wiped her face and locked the gate and went home. Because fear that is felt all the way to the bottom and then set down on purpose becomes something far more dangerous to your enemies than courage ever was. It becomes clarity. By the time Kambili understood she would not have the export money in hand before Chief Dumebi's due date, she had 30 days left. 30 days to find from nowhere a sum that would have taken that factory a year to earn. 30 days Or Chief Dumebi's quiet claws would swallow Onwuka Naturals whole, and the 40 women, and the surname over the gate. And it was precisely then, precisely when she was at her most cornered, precisely when a drowning woman will grab any hand, that the rescue appeared. That is the timing I want you to notice, my people, not the rescue itself, the timing of it. Her uncle came to her, Chief Kambili Onwuka, her late father's elder brother, the trustee of her grandfather's estate, a man who had spent Kambili's whole life being disappointed in her in that soft, pitying voice, certain relatives perfect. Old Pa Chukwueloka Onwuka, her grandfather, had died when Kambili was a girl and left behind real wealth, land in Aba and Owerri now worth a fortune, and shares, all of it tied up in a family trust with Uncle Namdi as trustee. That estate, Uncle Namdi reminded her now gently, could clear Chief Dumebi's debt without even noticing the loss.
"But you know the condition your grandfather set, Kambili,"
he said, shaking his head as though the condition grieved him personally.
"Papa was an old man from an old time. The estate passes to a granddaughter only upon her marriage. He could not imagine a woman holding such things alone. It is not my rule, my daughter. I only keep it. Marry, and the trust opens, and all of this ends. Refuse, and my hands are tied. I cannot release one kobo to an unmarried woman, and I cannot watch our family name go under Dumebi's foot either."
And so the shape of the trap was complete, and it was a beautiful shape, my people. I must give them that. On one side, a debt engineered to come due before her real money could arrive. On the other, a family fortune that could save her, locked behind a single door. And the only key to that door was a husband. And would you believe it, they already had the husband waiting. His name was Obiora Maduekwe. He was composed, well-dressed, unhurried, the kind of man who lets silence do his talking. He offered Kambili the cleanest arrangement in the world, a marriage on paper. Marry him, the trust would open, the debt would die, the company and the women would be saved, and afterwards, in a year, quietly, they would part. No claims, no drama, two adults who had helped each other through a hard season. He even had his own reason ready, smooth as riverstone. His own family, his own inheritance, his own board, all of them apparently pressing him to produce a wife. A marriage of convenience, he called it. Mutual, painless. My people, let me stop here and say something to every woman who has ever been offered rescue by the very people who arranged her ruin. There was a particular insult buried inside that kind of mercy, and most people never name it. It is not only that they want to take what you built, it is that they need you to be grateful while they do it. They need you to sign your own surrender with a smile, calling it your best option, so that afterwards, when you have nothing, you cannot even say you were robbed, because look, you agreed. The cruelest cages are not the ones they lock you in. They are the ones they convince you to walk into, thanking them for the door. If someone has ever offered to save you from a fire, and something in your belly whispered that the smell of petrol was on their own hands, type "check the matches" in the comments, because that whisper is not fear. That whisper is your grandmother's blood. And Kambili's grandmother had not raised her granddaughter to burn quietly. She did not say yes to Obiora, and she did not say no.
She said, "Give me a few days to prepare myself."
Because a cornered woman, who is also a chemist, knows one thing above all others. Before you react to a mixture, you identify what is actually in it. That night, she sat with her mother, the same woman whose kitchen pot had started all of this a lifetime ago, and told her everything. Her mother listened the way old women listen, without once flinching. And when Kambili had finished, she said only a single thing in Igbo that her daughter would carry for the rest of her life.
Noa. When a goat suddenly becomes desperate to help you carry your yams to the market, ask yourself first why the goat has lost its appetite for yam. A hungry animal does not stop being hungry, Kambili. It only changes what it is hungry for.
My people, there is a wisdom in our mothers that no boardroom on earth can teach. And in the end, it always says the same thing, that a generosity which arrives at the exact hour your ruin has been arranged is not generosity at all. It is the second half of the ruin, and it is simply changed into finer clothes to come and sit beside you. She started with the smallest, oddest detail. Obiora. Where had a suitable, willing, conveniently single husband simply materialized from, at the exact moment she needed one? Introduced by the exact uncle enforcing the marriage rule, blessed by the exact financier holding her debt. Real life does not arrange its furniture that neatly. Only a set does. She stopped reacting like a victim and started working like a chemist, and a chemist trusts no label she has not tested with her own hands. She pulled every document. She traced who had introduced whom and when and in what order it had all arrived. And she saw that the loan and the held payment and the sudden marriage rule and the waiting willing husband had not come to her like four separate misfortunes at all. They had come like four notes of the same chord, struck by the same hand. Coincidence, my people, is a lazy thing. It arrives loosely in no particular order, pointing nowhere in particular. But a plan arrives tight, in sequence, every single piece leaning toward the same place. And everything that was happening to Kambili was leaning, with a beautiful and terrible discipline, toward one door, a wedding, behind which stood every single thing she owned. So Kambili did what she had always done. She read. She read Obiora Maduekwe the way she read a supplier certificate of analysis, looking not at what it declared, but at what it quietly failed to. And within a week, a woman she trusted at her bank mentioned, in passing, an ordinary thing that turned Kambili's blood to cold water. Obiora Maduekwe was a director at one of Chief Dumebi's own companies. Not a stranger, not an independent man with his own board pressing him for a wife. Chief Dumebi's man, placed, positioned, aimed. And now, my people, the whole beautiful shape turned inside out in her hands, and she saw it for the machine it truly was. If she married Obiora, the trust would open, and it would open into the arms of Chief Dumebi's own director. The family land, her grandfather's fortune, would flow to her at the very moment she was legally bound to Dumebi's instrument. They did not want her to marry so she could save her company. They wanted her to marry so that they could take the company through the debt and the inheritance through the husband. Everything her grandfather built and everything she built swept into the same net, in one wedding, with her signature and her gratitude on it. Uncle Namdi got his cut for enforcing the rule. Dumebi got it all, and Onwuka Naturals and the 40 women were never going to be saved at all. They were the bait. A lesser story would have Kambili scream or weep or run. This is not a lesser story, and she was not a lesser woman. She did something far more frightening to men like that. She went quiet, and she went to work, and she stopped playing the game they had built for her and started looking for the one door they had been so busy waving her past. Because here's the thing the two clever men had never seriously considered in all their cleverness. That first export payment, the one that had been delayed, held, queried into oblivion, was real. It existed. A genuine UK buyer genuinely owed Onwuka Naturals a great deal of money for goods already sitting on their shelves and selling. That money had not vanished. It had been stopped. And anything a man stops, my people, another hand can unstop, if she is willing to stop being polite and start asking the buyer directly why a company selling their soap could not be paid for it. Kambili stopped going through Chief Dumebi's trade finance facilitator, the smooth middleman he had helpfully arranged to manage her export banking. She reached the UK buyer herself, the actual head of purchasing, a brisk woman in Manchester who was astonished to learn that Onwuka Naturals had not been paid, because as far as her record showed, the first tranche had been authorized weeks earlier and was simply awaiting a confirmation that Kambili's own facilitator kept failing to return. One phone call, founder to buyer,
over the head of every man who had inserted himself into the pipe, and the leak had a name, and the name traced straight back through Dumebi's facilitator to Dumebi's own hand. He had not been unlucky with her payment. He had been sitting on the valve. Drop a fire emoji if you already feel the wind changing, my people, because it was about to change hard, and it was going to come from the one direction those men were absolutely certain was sealed.
Now the second turn, and this one I did not see coming either, the first time I heard this story told. Because as Kambili moved quietly to reclaim her own payment, Obiora Maduekwe, the placed man, the aimed man, Chief Dumebi's own director, came to her, alone, without his employer's knowledge, and he did the thing the whole scheme depended on him never doing. He told her the truth.
I was sent to marry you,
He said, and he did not soften it. And I respect a man who does not soften the knife he is confessing to.
Dumebi and your uncle planned all of it. The loan, the held payment, the marriage. I was the instrument. I agreed because Dumebi holds a debt over my own family, the way he holds one over half this city. But I have spent 3 weeks watching you fight for 40 women who are not even your blood, while my own paymasters plot to throw them into the street. And I found I could not do it. Everything is here, Kambili. Every message, every instruction he gave me. Take it, use it, and understand me clearly. I am not giving you this so that you will marry me for real, out of gratitude. That would only be a softer version of the same cage. I am giving it to you so that you will never have to marry anyone to be free. What you do after that is yours, and only yours.
My people, sit with that man for a moment, because he is the hardest kind of person to judge, and I will not insult you by making him simple. He was a coward who let himself be aimed like a weapon at an innocent woman, and he was a man who, at the one moment it cost him everything, refused to fire. Both true, both him. The world is full of people who are exactly one brave decision away from being someone they could live with, and most of them never make it. Obiora made his. It did not wash the earlier cowardice clean, but it opened a door out of it, and that is more than most cowards ever give themselves. And here is a thing worth carrying home, my people. We are quick, so quick, to sort people into the good and the wicked and be done with them forever. But most real betrayals and most real rescues come out of the same trembling middle of a person, that narrow bench where fear and conscience are forced to sit side by side. The men who never lift a finger to help you are not always monsters. The men who do are not always heroes. Watch instead for the one moment a person is asked to choose against their own comfort, against their own safety, because that single moment will tell you more about who they truly are than 100 of their easy days ever could. With Obiora's evidence in one hand and the buyer's confirmation in the other, Kambili went to see one more person, not a lawyer, not yet, but an old man everyone else had forgotten. Pa Celestine, her grandfather's clerk of 40 years, retired now, half-blind, living behind the old family land in Owerri, with a tin box of papers he had refused to surrender to anyone, because Pa Chukwueloka had told him once, long ago, "Celestine, keep these, and give them only to my grandchildren's own hands, never to my sons." Kambili drove the 3 hours to Owerri herself, over roads that punished the car, to a low house behind the old family land where a nearly blind old man sat on a veranda he had not left in years. He did not know her face when she arrived, but when she spoke her grandfather's name, and then her father's, and then her own, the old man's hands began to shake, and he asked her to come closer so that he could touch her jaw, because Pa Chukwueloka had had that very jaw, he said, and he had been waiting a long time for someone carrying that jaw to come and ask him for the truth.
They came for these papers,
He told her, meaning her uncle, meaning years of quiet pressure.
I told them the box was lost in the flood. A man can carry one lie for 40 years, my daughter, if he made the promise to a good man.
And he reached beneath his chair and brought out the tin. And in that tin box, my people, was the third turn. And it was the one that broke the whole scheme at its root. The grandfather's original trust deed. The real one. And in the real one, there was no marriage condition. None. Old Pa Chukwueloka Onwuka, whatever else he was, had left his estate to his grandchildren to vest simply upon their reaching the age of 30, an age Kambili had passed 2 years before. The marriage condition that Uncle Namdi had been solemnly enforcing, the entire locked door that had made a husband the only key, had never existed in her grandfather's wishes at all. It had been inserted years later into a doctored administration document by the trustee himself, by Uncle Namdi, who could not bear to release wealth to an unmarried woman he could not control, and who had found in Chief Dumebi a partner willing to help him make sure that when she finally did qualify, everything would flow straight out of her hands and into theirs. The estate had been Kambili's, free and clear, for 2 years. She had never needed to marry anyone. The one thing they had all sworn was her only option had been a lie, built specifically to look like a locked door, so that they could sell her the key. Let me tell you how it ended, my people, because this family of thieves had earned every hour of what came for them. Kambili did not marry Obiora. She did not marry anyone. On the 29th day, one day before Chief Dumebi's clause could close its jaws, the first export payment, unstopped at last by the buyer herself the moment she understood what her records had been hiding, landed in full in the Onwuka Naturals account. Kambili walked into Chief Dumebi's glass-doored office, past the driver, past the smile that was already curdling because he had heard the money had moved, and she repaid his bridge loan to the last kobo, on time, in full, and watched his beautiful clause turn into what it had always secretly been to a woman who paid on time. Worthless paper.
You have made a mistake.
Chief Dumebi said very quietly.
No, Chief.
She answered just as quietly.
I have made a payment. You are the one who made the mistake. You lit a fire to sell me water, and you forgot that I am a chemist. I know exactly what water costs, and exactly who set the fire.
The evidence did the rest, and it did not need to shout. Obiora's messages, the record of the deliberately held payment, Pa Celestine's original deed against Uncle Namdi's forged one, laid side by side before the right authorities. They told a single, undeniable story of 2 men who had conspired to defraud a woman of a company and an inheritance in one engineered stroke. Chief Dumebi Iludigwe, philanthropist of 100 weddings, spent the following 2 years learning that a finance house built on quiet coercion cannot survive one loud exposure. His glass doors closed. His facilitator turned state's evidence to save himself, and the men who once called him at every function stopped taking his calls. Uncle Namdi, trustee of nothing now, was removed by the court, made to account for years of an estate he had administered like his own pocket, and left to sit in a village that had watched him try to sell his own brother's granddaughter to a stranger for a cut. And there is no title, my people, that buys a man out of that kind of looking. I want to say something here about that kind of downfall, because people always expect these stories to end in handcuffs, and they feel cheated when they do not. Kambili could have pushed harder for prison, and I know some of you wanted her to. But understand what actually happened to those men. Chief Dumebi did not merely lose a case. He lost the one thing his whole power had ever been built on, the belief in every room in that city that he was a man you did not cross and could not beat. A quiet woman with a soap factory crossed him and beat him in 30 days with a telephone and an old man's tin box. After that, his threats were only noise.
and the whole city had watched the noise fail. For a man like that, my people, being survived is a heavier sentence than being jailed. The prison he walked into had no walls and no release date, and he had laid every brick of it with his own 2 hands. Obiora Maduekwe answered, too, for the part he had played before the part he refused to play. The truth he handed Kambili also implicated himself, and he did not run from that. But because his evidence had broken the whole conspiracy open, and because he had given it expecting nothing, he came through it lighter than the men who had aimed him. He and Kambili did not ride into a sunset. This is not that kind of story. And she was not a prize to be awarded to the least bad man in the room.
They parted as what they had actually become. 2 people who had each, at the last moment, chosen to be free rather than safe. What grew between them after that, slowly, on equal ground, with no debt and no trap and no uncle's smile between them, is a different story, and it belongs to them, not to us. And the 40 women, the widows, the mothers, the girls, and the branded aprons never knew, most of them, how close the roof had come to falling. Kambili made sure of that. But she did not forget who had held it up with her. Old Pa Celestine, who had guarded a tin box of truth for 40 years for a wage no one ever paid him, spent his last years in a small house Kambili built for him behind the Owerri land that was now, finally, indisputably hers. His grandson's school fees settled to the end. And Mama Nkoli, the eldest of the factory women, the widow forewoman who had noticed Kambili's sleepless months, and quietly organized the others to work double shifts to fill that first export order on time without being asked. Mama Nkoli did not stay a forewoman. Kambili made her a partner in a second line the export contract paid to build, because a woman who rallies the house to save it when she does not even know it is in danger is not staff, my people. She is the reason the house still stands. Onwuka Naturals is on shelves in 3 countries now. There are 2 factories and the surname over both gates. And Kambili Onwuka, who was once sat down between 2 smiling men and told that marrying one of them was her only option, answers to no one's permission for any of it. If this story reached something real in you tonight, a fight you were in the middle of, a rescue that smelled like petrol, a door someone swore was your only one, do not leave this family without joining it first. Subscribe so the next story finds you the very night it lands. And tell me in the comments right now, what city, what country is this story finding you in tonight? From Lagos to London, from Accra to Atlanta, from Nairobi to New York, from Aba to Birmingham. I want to see just how far this fire has carried. And do not go yet, because there is already another story waiting for you right there on your screen right now. Another quiet builder somebody powerful decided was easy prey. Another door that turned out to be a wall with a bow tied on it. Because here is the truth I want you to carry home, longer than any name in this story. When powerful people rush to save you from a danger you did not see coming, stop and ask who profits if you are saved their way. Because a man does not build a beautiful door and call it your only exit, unless he is the one standing on the other side of it, waiting. And a woman who raised the whole house with her own 2 hands never needs a stranger to hand her the key to her own front door. She only needs to remember, in the moment they are smiling at her the widest, that she is the one who built the door in the first place. Until next time, my people, guard what you built, read what they hand you to sign, and never once mistake a locked door offered too kindly for the only way out.